Hello and welcome to the TCS Podcast, where we're dedicated to helping you achieve extraordinary growth and success to create lasting impact on your families, companies, and communities. I'm Eric Guy, president of TCS. Joining us today is Tim Klimchock. He's going to be talking to us, gang. Well, welcome first, Tim. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Yeah, and TCS community, you are aware that we have those 12 core competencies, and today Tim's going to take us a little bit deeper dive, especially around the things of finance and things like that, process, leadership. We're going to dig into that, but first, Tim, let's get into your kind of background of why we should listen to you. I know what we should listen to you because you have lots of good experience and things like that. But tell us about, your path, public accounting, serving as AEC, and then founding the Collaborative Advisory Group and what that does.
Yep. Thanks, Eric. So I was a tax accountant for 24 years, a CPA, and also have my CCIFP designation, which is a certified construction industry financial professional. I spent 24 years in public accounting with two different firms. The first firm I worked at, I probably was doing maybe 60% of my work for AEC companies. And then the last firm I worked for and was a partner in had a bunch of experience, and 100% of my client work was focused on the AEC sector. So really had a great experience in public accounting, working with general contractors, all different types of specialty contractors. I feel like you name the trade, I've worked with them, is what it feels like. So it was really a well-rounded experience in public accounting that kind of led me to the decision about 3 years ago now to do this consulting gig, where it kind of started out, frankly, as a fractional CFO type thing. At least that's where I thought I was headed. But the reality is of what it's become today is I work with 10 clients. Again, it's a mix. I have a drywall contractor, I have an excavator, roofing, HVAC and fire protection, a home builder, just to name a couple. And it's really more advisory board level work for my clients, where we're focused on things like succession planning. We're focused on CFO stuff for sure, where I'm trying to help develop a controller or a bookkeeper to take that next level. But honestly, a lot of times I get involved in operational things with clients too, as a fractional COO. Also, might not expect this from an accountant, but BD is part of it too. Legal, HR, kind of being a Swiss Army knife kind of thing of anything I can do to help the clients that I work with.
Yeah. So let's, we're going to talk about that, right? And talk about financial capacity and looking at things strategically. So when you look at financial capacity for growth with the folks that you're working with, what does capacity mean beyond just labor and equipment?
Well, I think focusing on cash flow and operating cycle, I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact, obviously not a lot of the folks listening to this podcast, but I think a lot of people forget about the operating cycle and the reality of the fact that, when am I spending money in order to actually receive that money, and just trying to understand how to trim that cycle down in terms of a lot of the contractors I work with. Obviously, you have payroll that you need to meet each week or biweekly. You have subs that, depending on the nature of the trade, might need to be paid a little bit more quickly than your customer is going to pay you. So trying to get your team understanding kind of some of those operating cycle and how long it takes for you to get paid. I think a lot of times a lot of other folks outside of finance and construction companies don't think about the financial aspects. And I think it's important to push that education to different parts of your team. And, I think another thing too is, just looking at your, the capacity of, other than, like you said, beyond labor and equipment. I think it's also looking at how strong your team is technically. One thing I hear on a recurring basis, which isn't a knock on the AE industry, but I do hear a lot of my contractor clients talk about the quality of professional services. The quality of the drawings just aren't what they were 30 years ago. And I think that's, having your team up to speed on the technical aspects of things and making sure that things aren't missed, and being able to interpret drawings better than you used to, because again, I just think that I hear that feedback a lot, that the quality just isn't what it used to be.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question that all of our contractors ask. It doesn't matter what size they are. This always seems to be uh, a subject that we're talking about, which goes back to key metrics. What key metrics a contractor should be tracking monthly, quarterly, so they know whether they're ready to go to that next level of growth? Because we have a lot of contractors who come in, they're looking to grow, they don't know how to yet. All right, but a lot of the metrics around finances and things like that are really important. So what would you say, what advice would you give on what we need to be tracking and really digging our heels into?
Well, I think first and foremost, it comes down to the WIP schedule. And, the first question is, are you tracking your WIP monthly? I've had clients in the past where they don't do that. They just do things based on accrual basis accounting or cash basis accounting, which might be what you use for tax, but focusing on having a monthly WIP schedule. And it's one of my favorite things to do, is looking at that WIP every month with my clients, just to understand how projects are doing. Are we over, under build? What are the margins? I talk all the time about the hockey stick, where you think you're going to make a certain gross profit for the duration of the job, and you want to try to avoid those hockey stick moments at the end where you have it shooting up or you have it shooting down. So I think that's really where I think a lot of the focus needs to be, and specifically doing a gain fade analysis. I have worked with some companies that weren't doing this before, but just, a gain fade analysis is ultimately looking at what are you at two different intervals of the job. It can be when you bid the job, it can be when you buy out the job, it could be looking at it monthly, but at a minimum, look at how you estimated the job, and then when the job's complete, look and see how you ended up. And it's not meant to be a finger pointing exercise. I think it can become that between the estimating and project management versus operations teams, but actually looking at this and trying to say, okay, what when a job had a fade, what did we do wrong here? What can we improve on? But at the same time, I see it as an excellent opportunity to, let's understand what we did right on some projects. Let's look at the team we're putting together, who works well with others, which project managers, are getting the best utilization of the operations team. And it's really about, people aren't using the data that they have very often. And it's about, if you have good controls, you have good numbers to look at, make sure that you're looking at the data and interpreting that data and looking at your jobs, especially after they're done, so that you can figure out how to be better moving forward.
And then a follow-up question on that, Tim. Like, many of our members come in, they're doing like 2-3 million, right?
Yeah.
Anywhere between two and five, I would say, even 1 and 5 sometimes. And they want to go to that 10 to 20. And we've seen a lot of our members do that. I mean, that's one of the reasons that they join Top Contractor School. But what are the financial signals that tell you a company's either ready or not ready for that next step?
I would say there's a couple things. I would say looking at the overall equity structure of the company, how much capital do you have to work with? Whether that's, and by capital, I mean not only just the equity you have in your company right now, but what resources do you have outside of the company that you might need to infuse for the growth? Also, what is your borrowing capacity? What, your bank being a partner here, how are they going to bring dollars in here for additional capital to help you, support that additional growth? I think looking to make sure that you have consistent margins, not only, look at what you're good at, but, are you consistent? Are you seeing significant swings up and down? It's like, make sure that you have, I mean, every construction project is different, but it should be a focus on looking at consistently what types of work, which customers we're working with, where is it that we really make the margin and find the best opportunities. Yeah, and then there, benchmarking is important, comparing yourself to other companies. I always caution people on that, because just from my perspective of all the years of doing this, you know, every client kind of treats things differently. Like, for instance, I could sit here for the rest of the afternoon and explain to you why project management salaries is a job cost. It should be job cost. And then I can also argue out of the other side of my mouth that it's an overhead expense. So there's people are doing things differently. So I would use the benchmarks when you see these things out there as tools, but it isn't the be all end all, because you need to understand that even though there's some general rules, people are still doing things differently. So, I think that's a big part of it. Also, I would say, the reliability of your internal numbers, like how good is your internal team? So as you're trying to grow and scale here, what is it that you're looking at? Is it good quality information, or are there problems getting things job costed correctly? The timeliness of your month end closes and so forth really is going to help you make sure that you have your game plan together as you look to grow and, expand from that lower level up to that higher level that you mentioned.
So for construction firm owners, what should we actually expect from somebody like you, CPA, CFO? A lot of our folks do, the fractional piece, which I think is a good
Yeah.
idea, especially when you're getting started. But I think a lot of our owners really struggle with, hey, look, I don't even know what to expect. I don't even know what to ask them to be doing. Is that was that
Right.
fair?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great question. I think that people, I frequently get told I'm not the prototypical accountant because I like to talk and I have a personality. So maybe that's why this gig's successful. But, I know a lot of great firms and a lot of great yeah, CPAs out there that do a lot of good work with construction companies. There are a ton of great options out there. I would suggest to people to make sure that you're looking to see if your person's qualified. Do they have the certifications that they should have? Are they involved in your local trade associations? Are they putting out the thought leadership there? One of the things we used to joke about when I was in public accounting is we would call them and construction firms. So CPA firms that it's sort of like they say they do nonprofits, manufacturing, maybe they do doctors' offices and construction is kind of how we used to talk about it. And I think you want to try to find a firm that construction is a leading indicator of what they do. And I would just challenge everybody to rethink of the relationship you have, not just with your accountant, but all of your service providers, whether it's your attorney, whether it's your bond agent, whether it's legal or insurance folks too. It's sort of like this industry is so collegial, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of it, and I have such a passion for it. It's just really fun to be around optimistic people that are getting projects done. I joke all the time that it fascinates me if you think about all the egos that are involved in a construction project between the architects, all the different engineers, the GC and the specialty trades. It's amazing anything gets built. And I think it's just it's a fascinating process to just be an outsider watching it happen. But look at these relationships differently in terms of like, okay, your CPA, build that relationship with them, understand who are the rest of their clients? Do they have any expertise? Have they learned anything from other clients that they could be, providing to you, and kind of cross pollinate? I mean, I don't give away trade secrets or anything confidentiality wise with my clients, but one of the cool parts for me is a lot of my clients have gotten to know each other now because, I have this small intimate group of clients, and it's sort of like, the excavator over here is doing something really cool. Maybe you guys should think about doing this. And, when they're different sizes and everybody's doing different things, it's neat. What are you doing with AI and on the technology side? And I had my drywall contractor that I work with that I think's a mutual friend of ours. Like, I brought him in to talk to some of my other contractor clients, just to show what he was doing with AI and some of the technology stuff he's using. So I think there's an opportunity for all the service providers to be not only pushing out thought leadership, doing webinars and different things, but I think it's about, if you really specialize in the industry, in my opinion, there should be opportunities, like, again, to refer business to people. I used to joke, it's like, okay, who do you want to meet? If I'm working, I'm in South Central Pennsylvania, I know a lot about the local market. I know a bunch of people. It's like, if one of my clients is looking to grow, there's nothing wrong with asking your CPA or your attorney or your bond agent, like, help make an introduction for me. If you know these people, like, get your BD people out in front of your service providers and say, hey, is there anything you can do to help connect me? Because that's also an excellent way for the service providers to build capital with their clients. Mistakes are going to happen, miscommunications. But, I've had clients tell me before, well, Tim, I can never fire you because you actually got me business. And who else is going to, what other service provider or CPA is going to do that? And that's worked incredibly well for me. And that's a part I enjoyed. It's fun that you can not only give those deliverables, but what are those extra things? Because I just think this is a lot of fun, and it's stressful. It's hard work, but I just see so many people working together in this community, and it's to be a part of it is just, to me, has been fantastic. And I'm looking forward to what the future holds with this as well.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I would ditto that. I mean, I do enjoy it uh, with our gang here. So let's talk about some practical implementation here, Tim. If you were advising one of our like inner circle members who's at like 8 million revenue, operating at a 4-6% net margin, what's 3 action steps you would have them take today to improve that financial performance and readiness for growth?
Yeah, I think first, as I said, the gain fade analysis, comparing your gross profit percentage and gross profit percentage and gross profit in dollars at different intervals of the job. I have clients that do it monthly. At a minimum, I think you should be doing it when you first estimate the job versus when it finishes. Another thing I would consider, and this has come up with a couple clients recently, I have a client I work with that has a lot of tenure in their departments in project management and operations and estimating and accounting, like people that have 20 years of experience. And one of the things, the 20 years experience with the company, and one of the things we're working on is getting these people together and having weekly meetings now and just truly understanding how each department works. I think especially in a smaller organization, that owner person might be wearing a lot of different hats, and you're just in this constant triage damage control mode. So if you can find a way to make sure, like, this isn't like I've seen things and heard things forever about, project management throwing stones at estimating and estimating throwing stones at project management. But I think it's important to get these people together, getting your team together, make sure that they're communicating how in order to be able to grow, you're going to need these people to scale. And it's making sure that they understand the challenges in these other departments and what the opportunities and how they might be able to help streamline something by getting that, communication together. I think the last thing I would say, is like a third thing would be, as I kind of mentioned a moment ago, like, this industry is so collegial. I have seen countless examples, whether it's clients or just friends, that people are willing to share information. I think that's a fundamental part of your organization. And it's, there's
Hmm.
peer groups, there's networks out there that you can really, figure out what works, what doesn't work. I've just seen countless examples in my 27 years around the construction industry now of people willing to share information. Like, there's been times where I've been in a room and I'm with 2 competitors, and like you would think they absolutely hate each other, but there's a mutual respect for them. Each side has a mutual respect. I'm not going to give you a trade secret, but let me show you how we're using this software. Let me show you this tool that we're using. And if everybody has the right attitude toward the work, I think there's just these great opportunities. So I would challenge people to, everybody's in this together, and everybody knows what a difficult industry this is. It's one of the highest failure rates of any business out there. So this and construction and restaurants, those are the 2.
Yeah.
So I think there's this willingness that a lot of people have to engage and help each other, which I think is really
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah, I think it's really neat. I've seen it here, even when those competitors, because we do everything in in Canada and the United States, all of North America, and we could have 2 people that are doing the exact same thing, real close to one another, and they still will go out of their way to help one another because they understand, like, especially for contractors, you're not going to run out of business, right? If you're good at what you do, you're never going to run out of business because everybody's looking for a great contractor that calls them back, follows up,
Yep.
does great work. And we just invite them back, and that's what it is very nice to be in a community like that, and, because, that when you raise the tide, it pulls up all the boats, and that's what happens in our
Absolutely.
community. And even with those ones that are working, side by side in towns, maybe even like right in the same town, they
Yeah.
still are doing well with one another, and both of them are doing better. So it's
I
good
think the
stuff.
focus is you want to have good competition. I mean, everybody that's been on those bid lists and sees that guy throwing out that stupid number, and it's like you want to have competition, and there's plenty of work to go around, and it's good competition should be applauded. That you want to, like, there's plenty of work for everybody, and there's no reason it has to be nasty. And I rarely see that at all. I like I said, that's where the opportunity is to me. And again, I'm saying this not just with your CPA relationship, but also looking at all of your relationships, and look, like, there should be a level of expectation. One of the things I joke about for years too was, I remember at the beginning of my career, which is 1999, I guess, the beginning of my career, there used to be this thing about responding to email within 24 hours. I think I still hear that once in a while. That was when you didn't have connectivity throughout the day. Maybe you were working in the field. For me, it was having a laptop out at a client. We didn't have connectivity. Like, I think that's 24-hour response to email is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, especially for a service provider, like, this industry, everybody's moving so fast. It's up to me to keep pace with my clients, is the way I look at it. So I'm not saying I'm going to respond instantaneously, but my personal opinion is that your expectation from your service provider should be to keep the same pace that you're working at. So all the work I've done with developers, GCs, specialty contractors, just everything real estate related, everybody's moving super fast. And if there's anything I can do to keep pace with them, that's what I think that, the folks listening to this podcast, that should be the expectation that you're getting. And I think a lot of service providers are falling short of that. And that's where I think the bar should be set is, timely answers, and timely responses should be the norm.
All right, another question for you. What do you think is the most underleveraged area for contractors when it comes to financial management?
Underleveraged area. Going after change orders probably is the first thing that comes to mind. It depends on, who's asking for the change order, who's accountable for that. There is nothing. I mean, I can't stand talking about money. I hate billing. I don't like talking. Like, it's an uncomfortable conversation. So depending on who's involved in the organization, and for some of the smaller contractors, a lot of times that's the owner driving that, and he's used to having that conversation. But a lot of times as you're growing, you have a former colleague of mine used to call it wimp junction, where everybody, you need to talk about it. And it's like, are you going to stand up for yourself and go after that change order and get paid what's fair? And I think I also think that, just contract language has been changing a lot too. I've heard a lot of feedback from clients on that you really need to be careful that, a lot of the time is spent reviewing contracts now, because a lot of people are working with their insurance and risk management folks to kind of change language just to, protect themselves. So I think that's, so focusing on that change order thing, timely reporting from the field, and really understanding what production you're getting out of the field, with which crews are be able to do which project managers can handle smaller, medium, or larger size jobs. And ultimately too, that ties into the backlog and looking at, I think people are focused on getting that work in, and just focusing on that dollar amount and the timeliness of the backlog. I would challenge them too to think about, what, understand your pipeline better. Who are your major customers? What sectors are you working in? Try to focus on your profitability by area. I think that's one of the things I try to push my clients towards, is not just looking at how we did on this job. Let's look at the completed schedule and the WIP schedule and say, okay, what sectors, do we do residential, commercial, industrial work? And it's like, okay, what's our margin look like in each of those areas? Are there certain customers that we do better or worse And there's certain geographic markets that we do better or worse. And just, understanding, and I think from the financial aspect, I just feel like there's a lot of data that a lot of people have that you might not be interpreting, and looking at it and slicing and dicing it in different ways can very frequently tell you a different story if you take the time and get some help to look at it together with somebody and just think of new ideas and strategies with it.
All right, rapid fire questions. You ready for these?
Sure. Sure.
So here we go. Here we go with the rapid fire. What's the one KPI every contractor should have on the wall this week?
Gross profit margin, percentage in dollars, gross profit, focus on large over under billings, but totally focused on gross profit margin.
All right. Loan or equity, which is preferable for a contractor scaling from 5 to 15 million?
Well, it depends. Again, rapid fire. It depends. I like equity a lot. I love equity a lot more than debt, but sometimes banks are forgetting that they're in the business of loaning money these days too. So another strategy with succession planning that I talk to clients about is I've watched too many people continue to accumulate all of their net worth inside of a construction company, and then they go to try to sell it at the end of their career, and it's not worth what they thought it was worth. So there's a balancing act here with using debt. I try to push clients to take equity out strategically because I want to see them build net worth. I'm not a financial advisor in the traditional sense of a stock portfolio or anything, but I'm trying to help business owners understand that it's important to take money out of this business and leverage yourself and, put some eggs in some different baskets too.
Good stuff. What's the worst financial habit you see that almost always kills margin?
Not capturing the change orders timely. I think absorbing those costs, being too nice of a guy, and not going after what you deserve to be paid.
Yeah, would agree.
Yeah.
A book or resource we should read this quarter to sharpen our financial acumen.
I think CFMA has a lot of good stuff out there. It's a national organization. For those who aren't familiar, it's a national organization with a local chapter network throughout the country and internationally too, I think a little bit, maybe up into Canada. But CFMA has a lot of great content too. A lot of controllers and CFOs of construction companies, are members of this, and there's some good webinars that they're putting out and some good benchmarking and publications. So I think that would be a great place to look for the financial people that work for your organization. That would be a great place to look.
Cash flow or backlog, which would you pick if you had to pick one?
Cash. Cash always gives you options. I think the backlog is always going to be there. Cash is king. Love cash.
All right. And then the last one, Tim, what's the best way to celebrate financial wins in your business without losing discipline?
The best way to celebrate, probably not buying RVs or boats. Let's start there. Those stories of getting RVs and boats on the fixed asset schedule. That's a big red flag when I walk into a new engagement and I see that. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So, but celebrate the wins with your team. There's a legacy aspect of what goes on in the construction industry, of the fact that, the economic development of your local region, for say a small contractor, the fact that you've got the opportunity to be involved in these projects and participate in them, celebrate not just the quantitative part, but the qualitative part of the fact that you're moving the needle, the fact that you're, my favorite part of what I do is when I've been in meetings with clients and I see them tear up when they talk about how the work they did or the business they created creates a living for somebody else. Tim, I feed 20 families because of a business I started. That's the stuff we should be celebrating. And that's the good stuff that, people that care about safety, care about, fair wages and make sure that they're taking care of their people and, doing family events with the staff. I think that's how to celebrate the good times for sure.
Good stuff. Well, in closing, Tim, how do we locate you? Where do we find you?
So you can look me up on LinkedIn. Again, Tim Klimchock. I also have a website, collaborativeadvisorygroup.com. Genuinely like helping people. Happy to talk with anybody. I have a very unique practice in the fact that I don't plan on scaling what I'm doing. I work collaboratively with some other consultants when people need help, and I'm happy to make connections for people. But I think it's a great industry, like I said, and whatever I can do to help, and always willing to have conversations with people too to point them in the right direction. It's anything I do moving forward, I really want it focused on mentorship and stewardship. That's the stage of my career that I'm in, and whatever I can do to help people and feel good about it is where I want my focus to be.
Good stuff. Thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate the advice that you've given us, and hopefully we'll see you back again.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks again, Eric. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for today for the TCS podcast. Until next time, keep leading, keep growing, and keep winning. We'll see you next time.